Good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us. Wanted to take the opportunity to give you some information about some new products that we've got to make energy storage systems easier to install and easier to understand. We know that energy storage is kind of the buzzword in the industry right now, since we've got a 15-year background with OutBack and even more with the people that are in this building here. It's very interesting to watch a lot of the misinformation that's going on out there, and we've kind of taken the lead in making these systems easier for many years, and so with SystemEdge, that's what we've done, is taken it a step further. So thank you, AE Solar, for presenting this, and we'll get right into it. So for our agenda today, I'm just first going to show you what SystemEdge is. We're going to talk about the difference between a custom system where you start with components versus one of these systems that's pre-wired, has the correct amount of energy storage for the system, and makes it easy on you. We'll touch on a couple of our different batteries that we make. Two of them are involved with the SystemEdge systems, and we'll just talk briefly about some of the other stuff that we have as well. And then I'll just very quickly give you an overview of Optics RE. Any of these systems are available with Optics RE. It is on board, and it's the most complete monitoring and control system that's out there in the solar industry. So our energy storage solutions today, we're talking about the pre-wired stuff in SystemEdge. Pre-wired versus custom selected. The pre-wired systems are kind of baked in. What you get is what you get. If it fits your size of system, which most systems out there will have a requirement that's somewhere in the range of what these SystemEdge programs can provide. But there's also the opportunity to expand with custom systems. Certainly not as simple, quick, and easy, but allows you to install systems with larger power requirements. Mix and match different battery sizes and inverter sizes based on the loads and the duration of those loads. For the pre-wired stuff, a couple of benefits for you. Everything is UL listed as a system. The batteries say OutBack, the inverter, the charge controller, it's all on a backplate. Very clean look. The batteries have all the shielding and protective stuff necessary, including shutdowns per string. So when your AHJ is taking a look at it, it makes it really easy to get that signed off. And we do have several different configurations of the pre-wired systems, as well as these with the batteries included. For custom selected systems, you can kind of see this picture on the bottom. If you have a bigger installation, you can make it look really good just taking the components and planning them very carefully into a complete system. So in the past, when you were doing a battery-based system, you had to start out with a bunch of components. You need an inverter, you need a battery, you need a battery box. You could either buy, make, or find a battery box. In this case, we're looking at, it looks like maybe an old freezer that was converted. All of that takes a bunch of work. Then there's a bunch of other components. If you got solar, you need a charge controller. You need all the little pieces to make it work, like a hub, like a battery monitor, a mate, which is your command control device. Of course, you need a combiner box for your panels. You need a transformer if you've got one of these small systems and you got 240 loads, bunch of cabling, and of course breakers. Well, you take all this stuff, you boil it down, and we're going to put it all on a pre-wired backboard. This comes out of the crate just like this. Basically, you have a back plate that you hang on the wall and make sure it's level. After that, this entire system lifts up, hangs onto that back plate, and then you can see the flange there. So you've got multiple fastening locations to make the thing sturdy. And after that, you're just running the rest of your wiring. These Radian systems do come with all of our modes available. So you don't have to just do a backup system or an off-grid system. This is a hybrid capable smart inverter. There's many things that we do that are beneficial to various utilities. In Hawaii, you can use this inverter. In California, you could do peak shifting, peak shaving. Depending on what your utility requires, what the billing mechanisms are there, this same inverter system is capable of doing just about anything that's needed with any utility anywhere in the world. So for today, we're going to be talking about the SystemEdge systems that are already available. Right now there's 5 of them. You probably will see some additions to this list in the near future. Basically, there's a couple of serious benefits to SystemEdge. We talked about the fact that it's a pre-wired Radian. You could buy that separately and you get that benefit on its own. But meanwhile, if you order these with the energy storage system involved, they're matched up, sized right. Basically, all you have to do is think about how you're cycling those batteries. You'll see these with a lot of our batteries, these little cycle charts, and these just kind of give you an example of how these batteries work. So for anything that's got the NC in it, that's a nanocarbon battery. It doesn't have to be recharged completely every day. So basically, you're going to see this little chart that shows these guys, you know, with an incomplete recharge, and that's something that would be useful both in an off-grid system where you're not going to get a full recharge all the time, or where maybe you have to run a generator to get a full recharge for half of the year. But it's also good in a rate arbitrage situation where you may have a peak demand or peak charges before your battery is completely full, and so you want to be able to cycle that battery without having to refill it entirely before you do. One of the big pieces to SystemEdge is that we took the entire system, we priced it in such a way that automatically there's $500 that's passed right through your distributor to you. It's on your invoice, so it's not like you have to mail anything. You don't have to do anything for it. You just purchase the system with the right part number, and that goes on automatically. And then, of course, optics is on board. All of these, like we were talking about, it resides in the Mate 3, and that's a great monitoring and control system that allows you to stay close to your installations as well as to the system owners, and helps you with any maintenance as well as getting a second chance to sell them new batteries, you know, when their batteries go bad, because you're taking a peek at that all the time. Now, if we're looking at these, kind of break them up into a couple different groups. So the FPR 4048 is used in our SystemEdge 420 RE and our SystemEdge 420 NC. The nomenclature there is just SE for SystemEdge. 4 is going to be the continuous kilowatts that the Radian can put out, and then 20 is nameplate storage. There's a little bit of a stretch here. 20 sounds better than 19.2, but as a matter of fact, at the 100-hour rate, these batteries have 19.2 kilowatt hours in them. For those of you that are not really familiar with lead-acid type battery systems, very typically the way that we look at that when you're comparing batteries is you look at a 50% cycle where you're using half of that daily. And so if you're looking at the cycle chart on the left-hand side for the 420 RE, you see how that thing goes up and down equally every single day. Well, that's the general idea behind these batteries. If you do cycle 50% of these daily, these will last you about 1,800 cycles. Another interesting thing to keep in mind, and not to dive into batteries here too much, but the 19 kilowatt hours of nameplate is at the 100-hour rate. So if this was a backup system, that would be 19 kilowatt hours if you used it over 4 days. If you use it in 1 day, it's actually closer to 15. So the faster you use a battery, you do get a little bit less out of it. So just wanted to clear that up. Marketing does put these names together, not intentionally trying to mislead you, but that is kind of how batteries work. So 420 means 20 nameplate kilowatt hours. If you're talking to your customer and they're talking about a 1-day backup, you want to lead them down the path of assuming they've got, you know, 15 in there, of which they don't want to use all of it. These systems do come with the Radian package as well as the batteries and the integrated battery rack. The combiner box is also in there. That combiner can be used some places, but depending on rules in the U.S., whether you need ArcFault, it's actually not a UL listed combiner, so it doesn't necessarily work for all systems, but it's something that we're putting in there. Very small cost to it, but hopefully some of you can use it. So basically, if we're going through these guys, these are really designed for either a small off-grid, a small backup system, or you know, any other sort of critical loads. I can tell you that I have this system right here in my house, actually with the backup specialist batteries, which are the red ones. So they're the GH batteries. And I went without power for 2 days recently. I have a well, I have a freezer, I have a bunch of lights that are on there, and then of course charging cell phones, charging flashlights, so on and so forth. I did get a little bit of a recharge on the second day. There was a little bit of sun, but we kind of got hit with that big storm about 3 weeks ago. And that little system there took my well pump and my freezer and those lights and all of our charging through 2 days, no problem. Went down to about 70% of my battery, so I only used about 30. I probably could have gone another 2 days. So if we're looking at this system, one thing to keep in mind is it's got a single charge controller as well. So it is built to have no more than 4,000 watts of solar attached to it. That's typically these days 15, maybe 16 panels. Also very typically though, the way that our systems run, you run your panels in sets of 3. So typically you're going to look at 15 panels per charge controller if they're in that 250 to 280 watt range. You know, as I go down this chart on the left, there's a couple of things here that you kind of, you put them on paper because you have to say something, but they all can vary here. You know, the amount of energy storage and how you use it, that's going to vary anywhere from like 15 to 19 like we talked about. Typical runtime using batteries. In order to do this calculation, OutBack took refrigeration, critical lighting, and some communications, and we took actual numbers, you know, basic numbers for a very standard type of system, and that's where we come up with some of these. Depending on how you're using those batteries, 9 hours, 20 hours, you know, for me the other day it was 48 hours and it was no problem. Average battery life, that's assuming that you're cycling these at 50% every day. So if you're not doing that, if you're cycling it at 30, 40%, probably going to get more life out of them. If you're in a very hot environment, you're keeping these batteries in the 90-degree range, you're going to get less than that. So anyway, just to kind of give you a background there that those things are not always exactly precise. All of these Radians do have dual AC inputs. So worst case scenario, say the power goes out for several days, you can hook up a generator as well. You can tell the system to automatically turn that generator on when the batteries get down to a certain point, and you'll be essentially backed up permanently if you've got enough fuel in that generator, because between our system and the generator coming on to power loads and recharge the batteries, you can essentially go on continuously as long as your fuel doesn't run out. For the bigger packages, these are essentially just doubling the size of the inverter, doubling the size of the array, and 1.5x on the battery. Basically, again, 2 different systems, the SystemEdge 830RE and the SystemEdge 830NC. Again, the 8 is for continuous kilowatts from the inverter, as well as generally the size of the array. And then the 30 again, 100-hour nameplate energy storage. It's actually 29 kilowatt hours. Again, if we're doing the math, if you're taking that out in 20 hours, it's 25.5. So when you're thinking about these systems, definitely talk to your customers about what they're using those batteries for so that you can set the expectation accurately. Again, these come with an IBR, but this time the 3 shelf. That's why you get 1 more string of batteries on there. And then again, the FlexWare PV6 combiner box. So if we're taking a look at these again, just to dive in a little further, larger requirements. Essentially, if you were living off-grid 10, 15 years ago, chances are you would consider this a very large system. People that live off-grid manage to typically get by very efficiently. But meanwhile, I put in systems routinely these days with 5 to 8 Radians just to back up someone's home in case of a power outage. So again, when we're talking about all these things that we've got written down on here on the left, you have to keep in mind that this is just based on us running some numbers down here. But again, 8 kilowatts of continuous, you can surge to 17, 28.8 kilowatts of RE or nanocarbon. In reality, if it's a single day, that's 25.5. This typical runtime, it could honestly be anywhere from an hour to, 10 days, just depending on what you're actually powering, how long you're powering it, how much battery you've got, and of course how much solar recharge you have. This system, remember before we were talking about 15 panels, is kind of the average number you see on a single FM80. Well, we've got a pair of them here, so we can double that. We've got about 30 panels capability here. And then again, you can add a generator. You don't have to do a bunch of crazy wiring with an automatic transfer switch in order to do it. You do have dual AC inputs. And then again, as long as you've got fuel, you're backed up for good. If you've got a really big backup application, we do have this system in here. This is actually capable of running, a small off-grid manufacturing facility if needed. But let's say, like I'll take one that I recently did. We had an Amish group that had, I believe, 18 freezers. That was their community storage. And you're not drawing a ton of power with an efficient freezer, but you draw it continuously. So let's say you want to be backed up for 4 days. Well, in a case like that, this would be a perfect type of system. You've got 100 kilowatt hours of nameplate energy storage. Let's say it's strictly for a backup system. You could use about 70, 80 of that in over 4 days with virtually no recharge. And so you could be able to back up quite large loads for a very long time. Again, same Radian, 8 kilowatts, same amount of solar input, 8 kilowatts, but we're talking about 100 kilowatt hours of storage instead of 29. So again, very large requirements, larger solar arrays. Not going to even try and guess on this one, just depends on how you use it, on how long you're going to have some runtime. And the same thing on the battery life. If this is a backup system, optimal temperatures and use, you may be talking 10, 12 years. If you're talking about using it daily to 50%, might be a 5-year plan. All right, so how does it work? Well, basically, we tried to make this as simple as possible. You can tell by the blank sheet of paper here. No, I'm just kidding. But essentially, making a single part number, not making you jump through a bunch of hoops. Delivery guy shows up, he's going to drop off a couple of boxes for you. The first box is going to have the Radian in it, the FP Radian, just like we talked about. The second box will have an IBR, either the IBR2 or the IBR3, if you've gotten one of those smaller or mid-sized systems. And then the batteries do come separately. We're not going to ship the batteries all over the U.S. in order to get them to their final destination, so we keep stock at the manufacturing facility in Milwaukee. So those two items show up. Basically, you pull that Radian system out of the box. It looks just like that. You hang it on the wall. Preferably, you have some help or some kind of sling to get it up there. An 8 kilowatt Radian does weigh about 240 pounds as a pre-wired system. A 4 kilowatt, I think, is pushing 200. So you've got your array strung up. You got your combiner box. You got your battery cabinet put together. And then essentially you're just making your final connections. You bring your array connections into your charge controllers through the load center. So this load center is pre-wired. It's got landing spots for your array already with 80 amp breakers through the charge controllers, through the GFI breakers to the DC bus, which is then connected to the battery bank. This battery bank quite often can go underneath of the Radian if it's a 2-shelf. But most installations, you'll see them off to the side. There are some AHJs that will read the code believing a battery bank has to be off to the side. That's really more to do with flooded batteries, but very good way to think about this is always try and have enough room to be able to put it off to the side. The closer you get to it, the better as well. 2-aught and 4-aught cable is not real cheap, so you probably want to try and get it, under 10 feet, but certainly nice if you can get it within about 6. And then you just make your final connections to the grid, if the grid is available, and you are done. Of course, that's a pretty simplistic view here, but for a sales guy, that's as in-depth as I want to get, right? Luckily for me, our engineers and our smart people have also put together quick start guides. Basically, the quick start guide for the Radian is about 4 or 5 pages, and there's a lot of information on there. But it does try and make it very easy for you to bring in The solar array shows you where to land those. If you've got a generator to hook up, it shows you where to land those. Talks about your sub panel, grounding, bonding. You know, most of the stuff in this load center is wired for you as far as the interaction between the batteries and the inverter. All you have to do is bring those outside sources in from the array, from the battery, from a generator if there is one, and from the grid or the sub panel here. One other benefit I bring up all the time is that these systems do have optics on board. So essentially, you have full monitoring and control of these systems. This is just a screenshot from this morning before the solar really started cranking, but you can see that yesterday was a good solar day here. This is the solar production in green. Red and black is going to be what this system used from the grid. This system is strictly a backup system, so they don't mind using the grid at all. They basically sell back everything they can to the grid when they have the ability to do it, and then they buy from the grid and net meter it out in the end. But they also are backed up against anything that could happen. And when we're talking about optics, significant part of this is that optics was designed with the installer in mind. Because of the depth of control that these systems have, there are different levels of access, and the installer really should be the one to set these up. That way, essentially, first thing in the morning, you can pop onto your optics screen and you can look at all of your installations in one fell swoop. If there's any events, you will see the icon go from gray to yellow, and if there's any errors or items that you need to take care of right away, the icon will go to red. You can also set up alerts via text or email to let you know when any of those things happen if it's something that is critical enough that you want to be on top of it. For the system owner as well, it's a nice looking dashboard. They get to see essentially what exactly is going on with their system at any point in time. Plus, they get to monetize it by understanding their cost savings. And you know, it is also a certain amount of eco-bling in that they can show it on their phone or on their work computer to their friends and let them know, you know, my solar system's doing this, I'm backed up, power went out, you know, so on and so forth. So we've got a little bit here. I'm done with the SystemEdge stuff, so we'll just pop into optics and we'll go ahead and take a quick peek around one of these systems just to give you an idea here. So when you first open up your screen, you'll be looking at a map. Essentially just kind of shows you, this will actually scale. So say you're in Northern California, your map will only show Northern California. And then you can jump into any one of these systems and get a gauge on what exactly is going on with that particular system at the moment. I'm actually a little bit sized funny here. Normally you'd probably be able to size this a little better. But basically, this system is buying right now. It's producing. Still a little early in the morning. There's some light cloud cover. But this bar up here is going to give you an accurate definition of what the sun and the weather are doing at your facility. This is linked to the closest weather station, whether it's a school or whatever it might be. So here right now, a little bit cool. Sun's just coming up. You can see, you know, they do have light clouds here, and that's actually accurate. And then if we're looking at the overall system, this is just today. So you can see about an hour ago he started producing a little bit. It's gone up a little bit now. He's at 400 watts. I think that's, you know, it's going to be in this range for the next bar. You can see his battery. The state of charge is against the graph here, so hasn't been using his battery at all, just on backup. If you want to see if he's taken anything from his battery, you know, last night, that's just keeping the battery healthy. That's just basically floating it. And then you can see what's come from the grid, and for the most part, the grid is powering the loads everywhere you look here. Now, if we're going to go a little deeper, you know, the view that I had here was 3 days. So then you get to see your solar production on 3 days, and you can actually go all the way back. Let's just say we're going to look at, you know, for months. So this is just this year in months. Pretty good production. That's going to be in kilowatt hours. Is that kilowatt hours? Yes. And then you can also dive in anywhere you want and take a peek at what each individual component is doing. So there's solar production. Go back to the day of. Now that's kind of the overview of really what your customer is going to be looking at. Now if we're talking about you as the installer, there's quite a bit more that you can dive into. I'll just show you really quickly kind of where you do your programming now that's so different. Now if you're used to the old OutBack stuff, you're standing in front of the system for a couple hours dialing through menus to get all of your programming done, whereas today you can essentially set up with basic parameters, go back, have your optic system plugged in, pop into your Mate 3, and you can do a lot of your setup right here. If you're going to set up your AGS system, everything's right in front of you. Everything is just drag and drop and then apply. So instead of running through long menu chains, that's how you're going to operate it. If you want to set up your battery charging as well, let's see, that's the Radian. Let's try the FM80s. And I know a lot of you guys have gone through this with batteries where you're setting up all your voltage, your time, your float, your absorb, your bulk, your equalize. Well, now it's all right here. You can actually program your batteries in less than 5 minutes if you know what all these are. It is one thing that internally we did not do on this. I'm a little bit bummed about it, but it just came down to internal systems, and hopefully it'll change. But these do not come pre-programmed for the batteries that are in there. So unfortunately, you will have to do that programming. Hopefully this optic system helps you with that. And makes it a lot easier on you. And really, that's the extent of what I've got here. Appreciate your time. I know we went quickly. Is there questions I can answer for you?
Hi, Kindle. Yes, we got a lot of really great questions coming in, so we'll just kick them off. Our first question we had from the beginning of the presentation, what is the largest PV size on a single Radian? Is that 8 kilowatts?
Good question. So with a battery-based system, you actually do not necessarily size the array to the inverter. If we're talking about these SystemEdge systems where everything is pre-wired, if you've got a 4 kilowatt Radian, a 4 kilowatt array is the largest, 8 kilowatt array. If you're talking about a custom selected system, there's actually reasons why you might have 20 kilowatts with an 8 kilowatt Radian. Let's say you have a load that's not going to pull more than 8 kilowatts. It's not going to surge more than 17, but it's on 24/7. Let's say you've got a 3 kilowatt load that's on 24/7. Well, you're going to need a very big battery bank in order to support that, because you're going to need about 72 kilowatt hours a day to support that load. You're also going to need an array that can put that 72 kilowatt hours back into that battery bank. So in essence, when we're talking about the size of an array and the size of a battery bank, you can actually separate those off from the inverter. The array and the battery bank kind of have to be sized properly. If the battery bank's not big enough to take the current from the array, you can get yourself in trouble. But let's look at it like the battery is a gas tank, the inverter is a motor on a car, and the array is your gas station. So what you need is for your car to be able to do the commute with the fuel that's in the fuel tank, and the gas station to be able to refuel that fuel tank. But in terms of your actual car being related to the gas station, it doesn't really matter whether you've got a big truck or whether you've got a hybrid. All that we're trying to do is make sure that your car can get from point A to point B. So I hope that makes it clear, but if I can break it down very simply, the array relates to the battery more than the array relates to the inverter. The inverter relates to the load that you actually have to power. I hope that's relatively clear.
All right, and from the same dealer, we had another question, wondering about rapid shutdown changes to the pre-wired SE830 NC package.
So for rapid shutdown, in the grid-tied world, it's been pretty darn easy. You get rid of the AC, you put it next to the array, and you've got rapid shutdown accomplished. with battery-based systems, the UL requirements and the NEC requirements didn't necessarily think it through entirely. And so there's been a lot of misinformation out there about where you have to shut down what. And in reality, our system that we've released, the ICS Plus, which is the integrated combiner solution, is the first listed and legitimate battery-based arc fault and rapid shutdown system out there. Now, the way that we did it, we went in the combiner box because it's close to the array, so you can actually control everything well from there. For an SE830 system, you would actually need an ICS Plus-2, which can support 2 arrays of 4 kilowatts, and it can shut down the arrays as well as the charge controllers. So with that system, you get your arc fault protection, you get your rapid shutdown, all the pieces that are necessary to do that. It does not come with any of the SystemEdge systems, but it's an additional purchase, and AE does have those in stock today.
Great, thanks, Kendall. Our next question regarding the SE420NC slide, is the battery life the same for RE and NC batteries?
Sort of. So if you were to take the same size battery, so you're taking that, 28.8 kilowatt hour battery, and you have an RE battery and you have an NC battery, and every single day you cycle them to 50%, and every day you fill them all the way back up, and they're kept somewhere near 80 degrees, they're going to last exactly the same amount of time. Now, if you have an off-grid system where you can't get that full recharge every day, and you may be hitting, 85, 90% of charge for half the year, so what you do is you go put your generator on that system weekly and fill it all the way up. Well, that system, the NC batteries are going to operate much better. And the reason for that is using the NC batteries as a partial state of charge solution, you can actually increase that cycle life from 1800 up to about 2450. And basically what that means is that battery enjoys living in that space between, depleted and almost full. It doesn't necessarily like to be filled up all of the time. So with an RE battery, if you're treating it like that, your 1800 cycles actually goes down. With an NC battery, if you're treating it like that, the cycles actually go up. And I'll make a couple points here at the risk of getting long-winded, but this is something that everybody should understand about batteries. We hear a lot of stuff in the marketplace about, this battery or that battery is going to take over the market, and there's no longer going to be a need for flooded lead acid or lead acid at all, or lithium cobalt is going to go away because lithium iron phosphate's the best, and so on and so forth. Well, they all have their particular place. They all are a specific tool to do a specific thing. So if you have an NC battery, then maybe it's the wrong battery if you're filling it up every day, or if it's strictly in a backup situation, maybe you'd be better off with an RE or a GH. However, if you have a situation where you either know that you're going to live in that partial state of charge, or for that matter, if you want to program that battery to live in that partial state of charge, then you'll get more life out of that battery, and that would be the tool for that particular job. I hope that's clear. Again, information is here for contacting me as well. AEE also has a couple of the smartest guys in the industry on their tech group to answer some of these questions. So if you really want to dig in on that, please feel free to contact me or Brad Bissett or Brian Teitelbaum, and we'll help you understand it.
Yeah, great point, Kendall. Our team is always there ready to help. Our next question here for you is it possible to dump the capacity of the battery in late afternoon, then wait for solar to recharge the battery the next morning?
Can you please read it one more time?
Yes, of course. Is it possible to dump the capacity of the battery in late afternoon, then wait for solar to recharge the battery the next morning?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's several ways to do it, and there's probably very good reasons. Let's take San Diego County SDG&E pricing, for example. Right now, in the summertime, you'll be paying up to 40 cents a kilowatt hour in the afternoon. Now, of course, you don't want the battery to recharge from the grid because you don't want to recharge at 40 cents a kilowatt hour and lose the efficiency of putting that in your battery. So what you would do in a situation like that is you would use what we call mini grid mode, and you would tell your system to take the entire backed up loads panel off grid as much as it could during those peak hours. It would use your battery to cover everything that it could with the preset SOC or state of charge level that you put in there. So as an example, let's say you tell it, take 50% daily during that time of the year. It's going to use that top 50% of that battery to conquer the peak charges, and at the end of that peak charging time when your battery's at 50%, you certainly don't want to use the grid to recharge it. So you can essentially tell it wait until the renewables recharge it, and it's actually as simple as just turning the charger off in the inverter system. So we have an inverter charger. All of our inverters have a charger where they can take an AC source and dump that into the battery. You can always just go into the system and tell it to not use that. Hope that answers that question, but yeah, absolutely.
Great. Our next question here is SE420 capable of 240 output without an autoformer? And how about as AC coupled backup?
Yeah, so Radians are entirely 120, 240 out of the box. So in a 4 kilowatt Radian, there's a single 4 kilowatt power module. In an 8 kilowatt Radian, there are 2 of them. Either one of those is a 120, 240 output. So unlike the old FX, where you did need an autoformer to do 120, 240, the Radians do that out of the box. And then, sorry, the second part of the question was?
Oh yeah, it was about AC coupled backup.
Yeah, so both the 4 kilowatt Radian and the 8 kilowatt can be used in an AC coupled system for backup. I did tease you guys telling you there's some more systems on the way under SystemEdge, and that will probably be the next one that we release as well, where it's just pre-wired without the charge controllers and essentially with the GH batteries, the backup batteries, where you can AC couple it.
All right, and one dealer is wondering if you can briefly mention what the Radian component does.
The Radian?
The Radian component? I'm guessing it's the inverter.
Yeah, so the Radian itself is the inverter, and if we're looking at this, I'll do a quick walkthrough just kind of the whole system here so you understand. But when you're looking at these guys, so this top box here, down to this gray, that's the actual Radian. Your 2 power modules are in here, your control stack and all that. This is an AC and DC rated load center, so this is where all the connections go. These are the charge controllers here. And then this is your Mate 3 or your command control device that kind of tells everything what it's supposed to do. So, when we're talking about grid tie inverters, of course, it's just the one piece. But with battery-based stuff, today we're still using, charge controllers, bringing it all down to DC, and then to the inverter.
Great, thank you. And our next question, is there a pre-wired load center for multiple Radians? There
is not today. Yeah, that's something that on the sales side we'd certainly like, but there are a lot of technical difficulties in putting one of those out there as well, just because you get into so many different configurations by the time you're going to 2 Radians.
All right. And is the advertised battery storage the 100% value, or is the advertised battery storage value the amount of energy you can draw from the batteries?
No, it's the 100%. So that's worth actually going back to. So let's take one of these here and just talk about it one more time. So went through this before, but I really hope you guys understand this, because remember we were talking a moment ago about you know, the different ways to use these batteries as well. Well, let's take three different scenarios with these systems. Okay, so first of all, let's say this is off-grid. So every single day, you're going to fill that battery all the way up, and you're going to use half of that battery. That's the way that we think about kilowatt hours when we're talking batteries. Every battery company out there is going to talk about kilowatt hours based on a 50% daily cycle. Anytime you're looking at AGM especially, that's this type of battery. So the same battery companies always turn around and call their batteries by the 100-hour rate. So in 100 hours, if you take that power out and you drain that battery to zero, you'll have 19 kilowatt hours in either one of these battery banks. So if you're using this daily and you're using 50%, remember how I told you that that number goes down? Well, it's actually, I think it's 15.5. So 50% per day would be 7.75 kilowatt hours. Now, if we're taking that same system and we're talking about a backup scenario, you're not using that thing daily, so you're not so worried about how deep you take it down. If you take it to 50% daily, you get 1,800 cycles, right? Well, if you take it to 30% daily, you actually go up to about 5,000 cycles. Now, no AGM battery that is on the market today really will live long enough for you to do 5,000 cycles on a daily cycling platform, because they also have a calendar life that ends at maybe 10 or 12 years. Now, however, you take that backup battery and say you're only using it 20, 30 times a year for backup, and most of the time not for very long, that battery does not have nearly the cycle life as these RE batteries. In fact, at 50% daily, it's only going to go 750 cycles. But it does have a much longer calendar life. So that 10 to 12-year window goes out the window, and instead you can get much longer life from those float batteries. So if you're doing that same math and you say, okay, 20 times a year, I'm going to use it to 80%. Well, using it to 80% gives you maybe 500 cycles. 20 times per year, that still is 25 years. Now, that battery is not going to last 25 years either, but it's probably going to last 15, 16, 18, somewhere in there if you're only using it like that. So a couple different scenarios, couple different ways to use them. The biggest pieces to remember are batteries are always going to give you their specifications based on a 4-hour discharge to 100%. If you're looking at the cycle life of a battery, they're almost always talking about a 50% daily cycle. And then the other piece to remember there is, if you have a battery that is meant for cycling, use it for cycling. If you have a battery that's meant for backup, use it for backup, and you're going to get the longest life and the best action out of those batteries.
All right, thanks for the explanation. The next question we have, how do you support three-phase?
For three-phase, we actually use our FXR inverters. The Radian, because it is natively split-phase, transformers that go split-phase to three-phase are available, but they're very expensive. They're often custom-made by Acme Transformer or one of these companies. So essentially, we take our 120-based FXR inverters, and we do 120 in 3 different inverters, and then our hub, which you saw I showed you there. It's just basically the little router that everything plugs into. That and the Mate 3, they calculate the phase angle from each one of those 120 inverters so that it's 120 degrees out of phase, and you get 120, 208. We do have a pre-wired package there as well. Sorry, my desktop is so busy here, I don't want to scare you guys off, but let's just pop in here and take a look. So this is a Flex Power 3. It comes just like this, 3 inverters, 3 charge controllers. Our standard ones are using either a 3 kilowatt inverter. So on this one, in case you don't know, this is the FXR inverter. Remember we talked about the different components? Well, you still have an inverter, you still have your charge controller. On this one, we have a DC load center and an AC load center, but you still have your Mate 3, your hub, so on and so forth. But basically, because we're putting 3 of these guys in, they're all 120, all we have to do is deal with the phase angle and then match the angle of the grid or the generator or whatever else if we're transferring. The other key piece to remember about these guys is they can be stacked up to 9 of them in a system. So a real easy way to think about it is basically each one of these is a 10 kilowatt building block, and you can go up to about 30 kilowatts with this system. So hopefully that answers your question. I would like to see us have much larger 3-phase capabilities, especially if you're in California, especially Southern California, dealing with any of the 3 big utilities down there. You guys have a lot of different billing mechanisms where rate arbitrage on 3-phase systems makes a lot of sense. I do believe that we are coming out with those bigger systems, but I can't tell you when. Actually, can't tell you when because I don't know. I wish I knew.
All right. And another quick question, what's the warranty on the batteries?
The different batteries have different warranties. Man, this is off the top of my head, but I believe the NC and the RE are 2-year full replacement warranties. The GH batteries, which we only briefly mentioned there, but that's your float specialist or backup battery, have a 4-year full replacement. And now one other real interesting nuance to the battery industry is that battery warranties are completely all over the map, and many of them are very deceitful. So really read into your battery warranties when you're looking at batteries. You'll see, 7-year warranties, 10-year warranties, but most of those are completely pro rata. And if you look at how they break down that pro rata schedule, by the time you're in year 2 or 3, you're oftentimes paying for 50 to 60% of a new battery. And if you're into 5, 6, or 7, you're paying 90, 95% of that cost. So on paper, 2 years or 4 years may not look that great, but essentially, if you have an actual battery issue with our batteries, we're going to send you out new ones without any kind of back and forth on charges or anything like that. Keep in mind as well, we're very good about replacing batteries even when customers mess them up sometimes, but really read up on your batteries when you get them and make sure that you're using them optimally. Couple of common mistakes that people will make with batteries, temperature is the biggest one. Don't put them in an uninsulated shed on the south side of a house in Southern California. Batteries really do not like high temperatures, and that'll damage them more quickly than anything. The other thing that people oftentimes do that hurts their batteries is they don't program the Radian system right, and it ends up cycling their batteries every day when maybe it's just meant to be a backup battery. Got a system we're working on the installer with right now where he's actually accidentally been cycling his battery bank 5 or 6 times a day. It's about 5 months old, and he's probably toasted his batteries already. So like I kind of dove into there with how it's a different tool for a different job, and you use the right tool for the right job, you also got to know how that tool works and use it the right way. So if you've got a particular application that can use a particular kind of battery, don't let somebody sell you on the latest, greatest thing. Go ahead and get the battery that's right for the application that you've got. And just everything on the table, we've got AGM batteries. So we definitely have a few of those tools available for you, but there are systems where you may need a different battery than what we have too. And although we bring the batteries to the table to make things simpler, just like SystemEdge and everything else, what we're trying to do is make it simple here. We're not trying to tell you that these are the the panacea of batteries and that they cover all of your needs. There's a lot of good batteries out there, and we work with everything from Aqueon to various lithium-ion to fuel cell technologies to anything new that comes along. We'll be able to work with that as well.
Great, thanks, Kindle. The next question we have Is the solar or the SystemEdge system exclusive for new grid-tied battery backup installs, or can it be used for AC coupling with an existing grid-tied PV?
SystemEdge is not, we don't have that AC coupled system out. You probably will see an announcement sometime in Q1 where we'll expand with a 4 kilowatt and an 8 kilowatt AC coupled, and I'm hoping that we also do a straight backup system. But AC coupling, to be honest with you, is quite simple today. It takes 4 different pieces. Basically, you've got to get your Radian, your load center, which comes completely pre-wired. If you don't have a generator, you're actually just landing your 4 leads from your grid tie inverter in there. And then you've got a mate 3, and then you've got your battery bank. And just to walk you through kind of how an AC coupled system works, you just take those 4 leads from your grid tie inverter. The busing system is in our load center already. You land those leads on there. There's about 5 buttons that you push on the mate 3 to tell it, you know, that you are in AC coupled mode. At that point, the entire system knows how to act. Now, when you actually get into the operation of those systems, there are a few other things that you're going to probably manipulate to make it work really well, and that's usually the voltage for sellback, so that your system is not fighting the sellback of that grid tie inverter. Typically, in AC coupled system, what you want is every single watt that you make with that grid tie inverter to be sold back. And so the way that we've set it up, our inverter just acts like a wire there. Now, because grid voltage can move around a bit, and because of settings in the Radian where we're not only protecting your electronics in the home, but we're also backing your system up, you may have to adjust your sellback voltage on your grid tie, or on our system, to allow that grid tie inverter a bigger window to sell everything back. But really, in terms of the actual wiring it up, putting it together, it's a super simple system. You can buy the Radian, buy the pre-wired load center, buy the mate 3, and buy your battery bank, and that's all you need. You don't go on the roof. You're basically just operating wherever that those 4 leads from that grid tie inverter are.
All right, we'll move on to our next question. I noticed the 8K Radian has 2 inverter modules with separate battery terminals. Can I use it with 2 different battery types?
You mean in the same system, I'm assuming. And there, you can always have multiple battery systems with transfer switch and controls and all the rest of it, but they're not going to operate as 2 different systems because they're operating with 1 control module in there. So basically, it's a daisy chain thing. The second power module in an 8 kilowatt Radian is in sleep mode unless it's needed. So your tear loss is less, and you've only got that first power module that's looking for a load to support or selling back power to the grid. We're not going to wake that other one up until we need it, but it's just a slave. You know, really, if you've got 2 different battery banks and you're trying to do 2 different things, I would recommend either using 2 of the 4 kilowatt Radians or a pair of our FP1 systems or something like that for it.
Okay, and another question we got here. Will SystemEdge incorporate FlexMax Ultra controllers in the future?
Yes, that is the plan. Those should be available sometime early next year, and I know that because of UL and everything, none of this stuff goes real quickly, but yeah, we're all looking forward to having the FlexMax Ultra on these systems. And probably we'll just replace the FM80, so we probably won't have these types that you're looking at now, as well as the FM Ultra on there.
All right, great. And the next question we have, can you remotely program the FM80 through the mate 3?
Yeah, as long as you've got an internet connection, the mate 3 is connected to optics, then you can completely command and control legitimately the entire system. There's 600 different attributes in an OutBack pre-wired system that are controllable with optics and programmable.
Great. And we'll say our final question here. For self-consumption, which battery is best?
Okay, so we're talking self-consumption. I'm gonna use the California example. There's different ways that somebody might want to self-consume, but probably you'd be looking at the NC batteries. Basically what they do is they give you that opportunity to have an insurance policy essentially if your renewables aren't able to recharge the battery every day, so that you don't have to worry about it. And meanwhile, the RE version as well, I think it's about 5 to 8% less in cost. But if you're in, you know, Southern California or Hawaii or somewhere where you aren't too worried about that recharge every day, you're probably all right with those guys. You know, meanwhile, probably get a few more cycles no matter what in one of those scenarios if you're using the NC batteries.
All right. Well, thank you, Kindle, for answering all those great questions.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for the great questions.
So that will conclude our Q&A portion of the webinar. Thanks again, everyone, for those questions. And if you have any more that come up or you didn't get yours answered completely, or you have another question, feel free to reach out either to your AE sales rep or to Kindle and the OutBack team or our tech team. We've got a lot of folks who are able to answer questions and are happy to help.
Thank you
Kindle,
guys
any
so much.
final notes here?
Nope. Just keep tuned and keep on asking, AEE and us if you have any questions about anything.
Yep. Be sure to reach out to your AEE sales rep if you're interested in looking into a system or placing an order. If you don't know who your sales rep is, feel free to contact myself and we can sort that out for you. And if you're interested in attending another webinar soon, we have one coming up next Thursday, and that topic will be the NEC 2017 sneak peek. So that'll be done by one of our tech team and should be very valuable with everything coming up here for the new year. And don't forget to check out our website for any more training opportunities with us. We have our dealer conference coming up that OutBack will be there giving some presentations as well, so you won't want to miss that. And just a final note to complete that survey so we can send you a copy of these slides. All right, thanks again, everyone, for joining us, and doing business with AE Solar and OutBack Power. Have a great weekend.